It was even at first grade at James Bowie that I recognized that failure was my choice. And I wasn't going to fail because now I had an opportunity. So education always became that opportunity. And because I recognized that voice, when I became an educator and I heard a 7-year-old voice, it only solidified that they were well aware of what choices they could make.
Well, tell me about your job. How did that get started?
Okay, well, I actually was a principal of a middle and high school in Houston, Texas, and the original company is called Equilibria, and they happened to go into the campus and want to do social responsibility and ask, would you be willing for us to come in and offer e-colors and training? And so I asked for some more information, and when the framework was about strengths and potential limiters, I wanted my students to have access to that. I needed them to have that framework. So for all of the times that they had been heard that they were at risk, that they were in the highest crime neighborhood that they lived in, I wanted them to have a greater understanding of who they were, so that then they can control their trajectory as to where they wanted to go from there on out. And so I said yes, and I started with my teachers. What I think we didn't realize was that the conversations that would change as a result of understanding ourselves better and trying to get to know others as well created a cultural shift, that we no longer could make excuses that we didn't know, that that's just who I am, just leave me alone. It required you to own your behaviors, to own your decisions, and consequently that spilled over to the students. So when I walked in my first year to the school, I walked in when students would say, my teacher's racist. And then I'd say, well, why is that normal for you to say that? That's not normal. Like there's some implications for you, to indicate that this is what's happening in the classroom. And that was just happened to be the excuse that they used, the cop-out that was much easier than to actually face whatever angst was in the classroom. And when the shift started happening, the company said, whoa, this has not happened before. We've never seen this kind of change take place. Can we look at it a little further? So then we started training students at the level that teachers were trained. So students became coaches and started conducting sessions for teachers. And again, the dynamics changed at a different depth, a different level. But as a principal, I knew that I had the capacity to create and invite that kind of change, and also manage it as well, to determine how much we needed and how much we were going to take certain steps. By the 4th year, we had created videos on bullying, how personal intervention, the power of choice for them had shifted some of their decisions, and we had reduction in gang violence, reduction in pregnancies, and we had some increase in attendance and graduation rates. So because all those things were happening, they said we need to go national, and that's why I stepped out of the public education sector as an educator and became the general manager of e-colors in education, to follow that desire of spreading the word elsewhere.
So you travel all over the country?
All over the country, yes.
And how long have you been doing that?
For about 1 year and 6 months now.
So talk about that experience as you travel across the country.
Well, we started out in Houston because I literally walked off on June 21st, and by July, within a month later, we had a Leadership Institute. In establishing a Leadership Institute, I knew that the educational leaders within any school setting had a lot of control over what was implemented or what was said as far as the culture of a campus environment. And so I started spreading word as far as what we were able to do at the campus where I was at, and began this Leadership Institute. Once the Leadership Institute was established, it was determined that that was going to be our foundation of how we were going to get others to be aware and know of what was happening. So by the time year 1 finished, we had completed 6 Leadership Institutes across Texas and California. And so no one had anticipated that that would be happening within 2 states within our first year, and of course that many as well. But when we decided to do that, then word of mouth spread, and other folks wanted to know what we were doing. So then other states started calling in, asking for additional information and training. And consequently, we started partnering with other schools to get the word out, because our goal is to have e-colors in every state across the U.S.
So you used to teach?
I taught middle school Spanish and high school Spanish, and then I taught bilingual 5th and 6th grade.
Was teaching something you had always been passionate about doing?
Well, you know, I am a first-generation college student, and so when I went in, I just went in with the success of having entered and been accepted to a university, not really understanding the scope or the realm of what that could be, the possibilities. But I got myself involved in several different projects within my university, and I initially went in as social work. I have to take a few steps back. I went in as social work because I left my parents' home when I was 17 to live in a children's home. And so I knew that the social work environment was something that had an impact on me. So I wanted to understand it more. I wanted to have an idea how the system worked. Up until my junior year in college, I had been focusing on the social work, and then I had an internship where I volunteered in Memphis, Tennessee. When I volunteered in Memphis, they asked me to do some social work aspects, work with kids who had been abused or neglected, similar to my story. And then they also gave me a class to teach students about the future, what's to come, and how important their education was. When you have those two different anomalies of teaching and mentoring, but mentoring someone who's hurt and teaching with the voice of hope and what could be, I found that the voice of hope and what could be favored me more. So when I realized that that's what I wanted to do, I immediately went back to university after my junior year, and I said to them that I wanted to go the education track. But I had to have that experience in order for me to recognize what route. But ever since then, I stayed focused to education, so I finished my undergraduate at Abilene Christian University. And I started immediately working on my master's, so that had me move to College Station, Texas. So when I moved to College Station, I went and I had my first job as an educator or teacher, and I stayed working and going to school ever since. I completed my master's and my doctorate at Texas A&M.
So you're an Aggie.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's go back to your high school years. And actually a little bit further than that. Let's start off with your elementary years. You attended ACISD schools.
Yes, I did.
So tell us what schools you attended.
The only elementary school I attended was James Bowie Elementary. And so I went there from 1st grade to 6th grade. As I have shared, I have a narrative that I wrote as part of my doctoral studies. And in my narrative that I wrote, I talked about walking into the school many times because my siblings were there, and I have a lot of them. But when it came my turn to go to school, which would have been kinder, I did not attend. So I was noticing that there was some difficulties with that. And that just happened to be that at that point in time I was an illegal alien. And so my parents feared that there would be some repercussions if they appeared without any documentation. So then I kept pressing to go to school because I have a younger sister who was now going to school and I was still at home. And I said, I need to go to school. I'm the last one that's left that has not attended. So as I put a little bit of pressure on, my parents finally decided to place me in school. But by this time, I started out at 7 years old in 1st grade. So when I began my journey, I was well aware that I did not begin it in the natural, normal way, and I was already, if you will, starting behind because of my age level and where I had been placed. It was even at 1st grade at James Bowie that I recognized that failure was my choice. And I wasn't going to fail because now I had an opportunity. So education always became that opportunity. And because I recognized that voice, when I became an educator and I heard a 7-year-old voice, it only solidified that they were well aware of what choices they could make to catapult them to whatever next level they chose to. And consequently, I was successful throughout my elementary years, albeit I was a little scruffy, we were, came from poverty, but I still was able to maintain the expected norms. I fairly behaviorally sound child. School was my place where I could shine, so that I didn't want to ever miss out on any opportunities that happened there. So Bowie was a really good experience. I had solid foundational relationships with teachers, as well as I would even say custodians, because I remember still his visual of our custodian that was there, and he was there throughout my whole journey. And everything that had taken place at Bowie was everything I wanted my children to experience. So that I share that with you because I have a 7-year-old now, and we were in Houston for a long time, and she started her kinder year there in that area. And when we decided to move home, we had decided that my husband is also from the Valley, that we wanted our children to have that same home school experience, as far as being at home, being in a neighborhood school where you would recognize your friends for years and years to come, and there wouldn't be this high mobility. At least that's what it felt like for us. And so we made the choice to come back home and to bring her back to Harlingen, where we were both raised, because of our elementary school experiences.
So you talk about some of the impact that people had in your elementary years. Tell us about those impacts and who they were.
Well, I wish I could remember the custodian's name. I can describe him. Very quiet. He had a mustache, and I just remember that he smiled no matter what I looked like, which again most of the time was disheveled. And he just always offered a warm greeting and a smile, just to know that he acknowledged me, and I was visible to him. I think now, reflecting back, I knew that when I would go to school, someone would at least know I existed, and that matters to little kids. Back then, also, when you went and got in line for food for the cafeteria, you waited outside the cafeteria, they opened it up, and you had what we called a cafeteria lady. If I remember correctly, I believe her name was Miss Tames, and she would take your ticket that they would give you. And again, because I didn't look the most appropriate all the time, she would always invite me to sit next to her, and I would have breakfast with her with all of my physical attributes that were not pretty, but she would tell you everything that was good about you, and I just remember her wanting to connect with us that way. And later my sister joined us, and there was a few of us that would just sit down with her day after day, and we always started our day that way. So again, having those routines established, no one expected it, no one knew that it would happen, but there was just always people around that were willing to help you, and if at minimum, just help you grow into your own self. And giving you that opportunity while you sat there next to them, feel a little bit of value as well. I remember all of my teachers, because I wanted so badly to make sure that I satisfied them academically to the highest level. And each of them, they were all different personalities, and each of them, in all of the personalities, I think it was Ontiveros first, Weaver second grade, Meadows third, Rogelski 5th grade. There was a mixture. We combined with multiple grade levels. Mr. Olivo, Ms. Martinez, and I can't remember the other 5th grade teacher. And then in 6th grade, I clearly remember Ms. Mireles, because she actually, that was my pause of after all of the years being there, when I was in 6th grade, when she would really be transparent and say, this is what you need to do to get better, whether it was my physical appearance or whether it was how to balance some of the emotions. And also now understanding as an educator what a 6th grader goes through physiologically, biologically, I now understood where her conversation was coming from. So her transparency to me was a catalyst for my style of speaking to students and staff as well when I became an educator, because finally someone was actually telling me what I needed to do to take myself to the next level. I wasn't just hearing the people recognized that I existed. Now it was, here's how you can get better even though you're in the situation that you're in. So that was my elementary school experience, and those were the people that I remember the most.
Wow, you remember so many?
Yeah. Yeah.
What middle school did you go to?
Coakley.
Coakley. Tell us about that experience.
It's as awkward as it still is for kids these days. And I remember then, again, I was shifting, and I talk about this. I wrote another chapter. So my original dissertation is called From Being Considered at Risk to Becoming Resilient. It's an autoethnography of abuse and poverty. I've recently contributed a chapter saying, starts out the same, from being considered at risk to becoming resilient, but it's an autoethnography of an immigrant child finding her voice and her citizenship. And in the latter, I write about how when I got to middle school, remember that voice that was shifting and the transparency that I had seen through Ms. Mireles, I had now recognized there were some things, some changes that I had to make. So I, who was normally shy, who was normally quiet and didn't really interject my perspective, attempted, albeit awkward during all of those phases of middle school, I attempted to voice my opinion at home. I attempted to say this isn't right, there's some things we have to do different. Whatever the situation may have been, my voice was becoming a little stronger. That's what I remember most about middle school. And then I don't think that any of my middle school friends, and I would definitely advise this to any middle school students, were the best advisors. Every one of us was struggling some form or fashion. And so if you're thinking that it's a friend that'll help you completely get out of whatever funk you're in or whatever problem you have, middle school is not the ideal. Everybody is streaming with hormones, and they all don't have the necessary or adequate words to be able to truly help you. And I think I remember that clearly, like even if they wanted to, they themselves couldn't help whatever issue. So it was only a couple of years, and at that time it was only 7th and 8th grade for Coakley. So the years went by really fast, and I think that when I finally went to high school, that's when the shift for sure happened for me.
So you went through a couple of transitions, one from to the 6th grade,
yes,
and then the high school. So now you're in high school. So
yes,
tell us about that experience.
Well, again, at that time, which was the late 80s, Harlingen had an Alamo campus, and it was 9th and 10th grade. So I had walked in my 9th grade year on my own. And if you remember, I recognized that there were some transformations that were taking place. So the summer between my 8th grade, as I was going into my 9th grade year, I started purposely like doing healthy things, whether I was changing my diet, exercising, and I was just trying to figure out how best to satisfy my own physical needs, because I didn't have a nutritious environment. And I knew that because of the abuse that I was experiencing, that possibly I needed to have an outlet that was a healthier option. So I started exercising. And so when I came in my high school years, I really looked different. And so people then started noticing that. But again, the difference for me was more in figuring out where my voice was and where I stood. And being able to leverage relationships now differently, as opposed to where I needed someone all the time. By the time I was in high school, I measured who I was with and decided who I needed to truly be friends with. When I became a sophomore, I actually shared that year with my younger sister, who was a freshman. And so when we shared that year together, both of us then solidified our relationship as to how we were going to manage our household and the issues that we were both dealing with. And she had also come to her own voice, and then we both equally decided that we would be able to move forward whichever way, and that whatever our situation was, we convinced ourselves that it was only temporary. And so high school for us had that significance. Well, I left her as a sophomore when I came here to Harlingen High School, which of course nothing like this back then, but I was only here for a semester. And the reason for that is because as I had transitioned and had found my voice, I was more comfortable and confident in sharing some of the things that were taking place in our household. where a friend that perhaps, like as I said, in middle school wouldn't have been able to tell me that that was wrong. By the time we were in high school and it was my junior year, she said whatever example that I had given her about the abuse that had taken place, she said it's not normal, which had been managed and made normal for us for so many years. So when she did that, it was actually her actions that catapulted me to fast forward and find a decision other than returning home, because I knew that the moment it became public, returning home was not going to be an option. And so when I finished here, it wasn't my choice to leave, but the only place at the time that was an option for me was a children's home that was located 5 miles south of here. So when I moved to that children's home, the school districts immediately changed, even though they were 5 miles apart. And so consequently, after the fall semester, I transitioned into the other campus. And when I transitioned, it was, again, for all of the right reasons. It was just probably the toughest experience that I didn't even realize I had. As a matter of fact, there's one of the repercussions as a result of that is I have several people that I know that I should know, but I don't remember. And I think it's important to share this, because whenever any students experience trauma, you think that there wouldn't, after many years of healing and having the professional counseling, I had no idea that I would not remember a lot of people, and it was due to the trauma that I had gone in that transition of leaving my family completely and starting anew. So literally, as you see me clothed here, the one item that I had that day was exactly what I took with me because I did not get to return back home. So I wish I could remember more people, but I have just recognized in my return home that that was part of the consequence of that transition, that I didn't even dawn on me was still some of the consequences that are being felt as a result of it.
So you had to make some tough choices.
Yes.
And you know there's children out there that are going through those situations right now.
Yes.
What advice would you give them?
First of all, their safety matters. And no matter how much I care for my parents, or no matter how much I cared for my siblings, there's only so much a physical body can handle when it comes to abuse and neglect. So they need to take care of that one body they have. There's no more than the one. Consequently, in addition to the physical body, there's the mental health issues. And I remember trying to get attention from other educators by hurting myself. When in reality, instead of hurting myself, I could have just spoken and used words to say I need help. And most people want others to tell us, hey, there's something going on. But I had put on the face for so many years that everything was fine, that people no longer saw that there was ever anything wrong. As a matter of fact, I had friends that read my published dissertation and said never one day did they know that was going on, and because it was a face that I had created. And I would just say to stop making the face of what you think is normal, and start really finding ways to advocate for yourself and make the change for the better. Because one of the things that I share now is that, and I recognize this even professionally, it only took me, one person, to stop the abuse that took place. Because once I left and once I made it known that it was taking place, it no longer happened. In the same way, that one voice, again, it carried me through my educational career. So whatever choices that those individuals are making now, you will see that it'll benefit you in the long run. So when I became the principal of the school, I knew as that one leader, I had an impact on what the entire campus could feel and look like. And I took that responsibility to heart. And I wanted it to be a safe place. I wanted it to be a healthy place where we can have healthy dialogue, all the things that perhaps I even wanted as a kid when I was growing up that didn't exist. But then I was able to transform that once I recognized what my environments were, so that even in our household, my children 7 and 3 would have never have an understanding of what I went through by the time I was their age as well.
And you talk about balance, and when in school, what kind of activities were you involved with? You know, I know obviously you were focused on academics. What are the things you were involved with to bring that balance?
Everything. If you can imagine, when you're in an abusive situation, you don't want to go home because that's where the abuse is taking place. So what I ended up doing was I went to school all the time. So attendance was not an issue for me because I needed to get out and away from the household. And once I attended, I said, how can I extend my time here? So whether it was cross country, tennis, cheerleading, I became involved, not very good by the way at any of it, but I just became involved so that I would have some other access, ability to socialize with others. And then that also gave me a little bit of an idea of how things really were different for other people, and they were not like mine. So I observed a lot, saying, wow, that relationship is different. Oh, it doesn't look like their parents treat them the same as mine. And so I was doing a lot of analysis, even with seeing who I was surrounding myself with. And then I also understood that in those extracurricular activities, that it is really what you make of it. So I ended up hooking onto the cross country, the long distance running. So still to this day, I run for long distance. I fundraise for long distance, you know, for other causes as a result of the work that I'm doing. So there's things that I still carry with me professionally now that seemed leisure, you know, at the time, but they were also a strategy for me to manage myself a little better in the midst of chaos, if you will.
So tell us about the most memorable moment in your career.
Okay. So I had happened to be sharing with you that I went back to the classroom after I decided that I was going to finish my doctoral work. And it was at that moment that I also recognized that the title that I carried was no longer going to define who I was. And because I went back to the classroom, I also recognized the importance of humility. And so again, knowing that I wanted to be in my career for many, many years, I had to balance even those things within me. When I went back to the classroom, I initially had 6th grade bilingual, and then my second year, I had a 5th grade bilingual classroom. And these were students who were transitioning out of the Spanish, and this was their first year to experience English fully in instruction, and I was their teacher. When I took the year with them, I obviously could relate and I could connect with them as far as the language barriers and the issues that come with regards to that. But even more importantly, I was already wrapping up my dissertation. I was writing my story, and I was telling them about the importance of their narrative. And I never shied away from the difficult conversations. So when abuse happened, I reported it, and it was just a non-negotiable for me, as of course it is for all educators, but especially because of my background with having had that experience. At the end of that school year, about 1 week before the school ended, my father passed away. And so when he passed away, the students knew the relationship that we had and the definitely ups and downs that we experienced. But by this time, we had forgiven, everyone in the family had forgiven each other. And I was going back to see my father in his last days, and it being almost the last week of school, I knew that also I needed to come back almost immediately thereafter to wrap it up. So I did not want to end the school year that way with him. So I buried my father the day before my birthday, and I arrived back to the school on my birthday. When I arrived back, the students planned for a celebration for my birthday unbeknownst to me. I get my morning started with a group of middle schoolers in the violin orchestra singing a happy birthday, and again it just becomes overwhelming because all of a sudden there's all these people that are around you, and they're little people, I mean they're children who are caring for you and showing you all of this admiration and how much they appreciate you despite the difficulty that you just had, you know, for me the day before in burying my father. And I remember one of the students whose name is Brittany, and I write about her in the book. She said, all of this time, for many years, you have taken care of us. It's now time for us to take care of you. That to me was
a special moment.
Yes.
Going back to high school.
Yes.
What advice would you give to students that are preparing for college? I mean, you went to A&M University.
I did.
I'm sure you faced some challenges there. What advice would you give to our seniors and maybe even our juniors that are preparing to go to college?
I didn't have a plan, and I would highly recommend one. I think that most of my initial energy and focusing on the fact that I was going to go to college was where I initially spent all of that energy, and then once I was there, I didn't know what to do next. Luckily, I had the wherewithal to know that systemically there had to be some resources, there had to be some people that I could ask questions, but I definitely found a dip when I went there and I wanted to come home. And because I wanted to come home, I called somebody that I knew would tell me otherwise, would tell me the benefits of staying there. And it was an older mentor that I had been talking to me throughout my years, and I didn't call a friend that would convince me, yes, at home was better. I went with a mentor that would give me sound advice, but I didn't have to necessarily go through all that if I knew in advance all of the possibilities that were to come. And even if I didn't know everything, at least I would have a plan of action as to how I would handle myself when I'm there, so that I would be safe, and so that I would be able to not waste money that was wasteful in classes that I didn't need, so that I would be able to know how will I come home, how often will I come home, what's the budget for that, because you're essentially broke while you're in college, because all you're doing is paying to go to school, and it's so time intensive that the time that you have for work is minimal, and if you're trying to take a full-time job and go to school full-time, it's almost impossible, because I did that for one semester, and it nearly just killed me, because you don't have enough rest, you don't have enough time, and everything that you're doing is not fully to the best of your capabilities. So I think that a plan of action of what their desired results would be would definitely be what I would recommend.
Talk more about your job. Tell us exactly what it is that you do now.
Well, I am the general manager of a human performance coaching company. Once again, I can tell you that I know that people don't treat each other well. That's my experience. And I would even go as far as to say I understand now. I'm 41 years old. I recognize the struggles that my parents went through, and I'm at a different place and different relationship with both my siblings for the better, and my mother at this time, as I said earlier, my father is deceased. But with the thing that I would question just like as soon as I start.
That's okay. Tell us.
Oh, where am I?
Yeah, describe your job.
Yes.
Describe your job to us and what it is that you do.
What I was leading to was, in my family, I understood that they didn't have the necessary training, the resources to know how best to handle difficult situations. When things go well, most of the time you feel good about it, but it's always when things do not go well that we find a person's true character as to how they respond to that situation. Our coaching company offers insight into how is it that you can respond differently versus react in a difficult situation. One. Secondly, if you remember, I knew everything that I was bad at because I heard it all the time. You're not good at this, and you're terrible at that. But I never had a framework as to what were my strengths and potentially what could get in the way if I didn't know that I was doing it. And when we have that framework, which we call e-colors, that foundation of knowing who you are and what you need to work on, then it's really hard for you to lead other people, for you to work collegially, collaboratively, and so again, we start with that framework so that we can have the healthy dialogue as to how do you manage yourself in these situations. Further, we found that often people come into schools that they didn't expect what the cultural environment was going to be like. So most people say we want to have the culture of the school be, and it could be that it's collaborative, it could be that it's inclusive, all of these things that they value. And we take them through a journey basically to figure out what is their foundation, how are they going to realize it, and how can you sustain it over a period of time. The e-colors and personal intervention, which are the two of the main sessions that we offer in our training, offers them the steps that are necessary to take that journey. So that's what I work on, and I work in the national platform, K through university.
And you've done some training with the school district.
That's right, I did. I worked with the instructional facilitators under the leadership of the organizational development team. And so they brought me in to offer them, again, just the foundational training now, and we're hoping to add additional sessions in this coming school year.
And I've heard some amazing training. Thank you for that.
No.
To close, we'd like to give you an opportunity to thank those that have helped you along your journey through life. So if you want to name a few people and give them a shout out.
Yes. First of all, I didn't get to mention them at all, but when I walked into the children's home, there was a director named Mr. Archibald. He's Luther Archibald. Actually, he was a former educator and decided to do this as part of his efforts to give back to the community. And when he was the director of the children's home, he asked me why I wanted to come in. And I said to him that I had a plan that I wanted to go to college and I wanted to further my education, and that the only thing I needed was to find a place that would be safe in order for me to create and set those goals and make them happen. As a result of that dialogue, he introduced me to his own family, which is not very common. And we had his wife first, where I established my relationship with her, and we had outings. Then her daughter wanted to come into my life as well, and she did, and she offered scholarships along the way while I was in my undergraduate journey. And so Luther Archibald and Cherry Archibald are the parents. Eni Borland is the daughter that then I became acquainted with. I ended up spending a lot of my holidays during college with them. Eni has a brother named Norman Archibald. So the university that I first went to, Abilene Christian University, he lived there. He's currently the mayor of the city. And their family then became my family. So I had Sunday dinners with them while I was in college as well. When I transitioned from Abilene to Texas A&M, Norman's wife, Nancy Archibald, has a family in Bryan College Station area. And so she introduced me to them so that when I made the transition, I stayed with them until I found a roommate. So it was Jerry and Irma Muth, and I stayed with her parents while I was trying to figure out my master's, my new job, and all of the things. And my husband and I actually ended up getting married at her sister's house, who lived in College Station, which is Marilyn Terrell. All of them had an impact, and I never knew how one individual could have had me connected with them, but they are and have been my family since I left to live in the children's home, and they became that extension for me. And I think it is safe to say that all of them had an impact as to who I am and where I am today.
Rose, thank you so much for being with us today. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.